I always thought happiness looked like peace, a safe routine, a home that smelled like fresh coffee in the morning, a bank account growing little by little, that quiet feeling that I'd finally made it. But it wasn't luck, it was survival. I worked like someone who was terrified of becoming nobody again. And honestly, maybe I was. When I was younger, I learned early that love doesn't pay bills, and trust, once it's broken, turns into a scar you never really stop feeling. I watched people promise the world and deliver crumbs. I watched marriages turn into prisons. I watched families smile in your face and stab you in the back the second you turned around. That's why I became careful, maybe even cold, to anyone who never lived my sleepless nights, adding up numbers, making plans, swallowing tears just so I wouldn't worry anyone. My fortune didn't come from an inheritance. It came from discipline, from opportunities I created with my own hands. I built something that became news, gossip, envy, and praise. Some days I felt proud. Other days I felt completely alone, like people loved what I had, but not who I was. And it was in that quiet space that he appeared. He didn't come rushing into my life. He came slowly, patiently. He spoke softly, looked me in the eyes, and listened in a way that disarmed me. When I said, "I'm tired," he would say, "I know. You shouldn't have to carry everything alone." And when I laughed awkwardly, trying to dodge anything too personal, he'd take my hand and say, "You don't have to defend yourself with me." I still remember the moment I realized I was giving in. It was late afternoon, sitting in the car, stopped at a red light. Out of nowhere, he gently tucked my hair behind my ear like it was the most natural thing in the world. I froze. That simple touch hit me like a wave, because it had been so long since anyone handled me with care. I felt embarrassed for needing something so small, and yet I needed it. I remember the day he proposed too. It was beautiful, so beautiful, I cried. He told me he admired me, that I was the strongest woman he'd ever met, that he wanted to be my safe place, my peace, my family. And when I hesitated because I did, I hesitated a lot, he added. I don't want your money. I want your life. And I want to love you the way you deserve. I wanted to believe him. My heart wanted to believe him with this desperate force, because behind every achievement, there was a girl exhausted from proving her worth. Someone who just wanted to rest her head on another person's shoulder and, for once, stop being the unbreakable woman. So I said yes. The wedding wasn't just a wedding, it was an event. It felt like a stage more than a celebration. Lights, flowers, music, too many people, too many long hugs, too many compliments that sounded rehearsed. You're the couple of the year. Finally, you found someone on your level. What a beautiful story. I smiled, but inside, something tightened. I tried to ignore the small things, the way some people looked at me like I was a trophy. The way he moved through the room shaking hands with important guests, getting slapped on the back, like this marriage was also some kind of business deal. And the thing that bothered me the most was a woman. She was there, flawless, laughing too loud, wearing a dress that demanded attention. I saw her, and I saw him. Quick glances, almost invisible, but I saw them. And my stomach dropped like my intuition was screaming in a room full of music. When I asked him about her, he smiled that calm, practiced smile and said, "You're nervous. It's a big day. She's just someone I know, nothing more." I should have pushed harder. I should have listened to that feeling. But when you love someone, you start bargaining with your own fear. You tell yourself you're being paranoid. You silence your intuition just so you don't ruin your own happiness. At the altar, when he held my hands, I felt like I was stepping into something I couldn't undo. I was shaking, not from fear. I told myself it was just emotion. People applauded, and I swore life was finally giving me something good. But while I said my vows, I noticed something. His eyes weren't on me the whole time. For a few seconds, he looked far away, like he was calculating something, like I was just part of a plan. I swallowed hard and finished my words with my voice trembling, pretending it was only nerves. When he kissed me, the room exploded in applause. I smiled for the cameras, for the family, for the friends. But deep down, that same feeling came back, sharp and stubborn like a warning. This wasn't happiness. It was goodbye. And that night, when I thought I was finally going to rest, I still didn't know my real marriage hadn't been to him. It had been to the lie. And I would only understand that when he asked me to talk after the party. And I agreed, never imagining it would be the last time I ever got into a car as his wife. The party ended the way all big celebrations do. Tired laughter, heels carried in hands, smeared makeup, promises to meet again that nobody really intends to keep. I was exhausted, but relieved. I thought once the doors closed, I'd finally be safe. Just the two of us. No audience, no stares, no strange feeling that hadn't left me for even a second. He came up behind me while I stared at myself in the dressing room mirror, placed his hands on my shoulders, and said in that gentle voice, "Let's get out of here. I want it to be just you and me." I smiled. Small and tired, but real. I needed to believe the day would end well. In the car, the city passed by the windows like a silent movie. I slipped off my shoes and leaned my head back, trying to organize my thoughts. That's when he changed the route. At first, I didn't question it. I trusted him. And trust is exactly that, handing someone the wheel of your life and closing your eyes. "We need to stop somewhere first," he said. "Where?" I asked, trying to keep it light. "A surprise. Trust me." The word trust landed heavy. Still, I stayed quiet. The city lights faded behind us. The smooth streets turned into a dark road. My body reacted before my mind could. My heart sped up. My hands got sweaty. I asked again, this time without a smile, "Where are we going?" He didn't answer right away. He just turned up the radio, like the music could drown out my questions. When the car stopped, there was nothing around us. No houses, no lights, just insects in the dark, and a cold wind that cut straight through me before I even stepped out. That's when something inside me broke. Not fear, recognition. Like every piece finally clicked into place. She appeared on the other side of the car. The woman from the wedding, the loud laugh, the attention-seeking dress, the glances I tried to ignore. Now she didn't even pretend. She looked calm, confident, like she belonged there. And my husband didn't look surprised at all. He just let out a breath, like he was tired of me. "I need you to be strong," he said. Those words still echo in my head. I asked what was happening. I asked why. I asked if this was some cruel joke. They didn't answer immediately. They just looked at each other. And then he spoke in the same calm voice he used at the altar. This was never about love. It was about opportunity. Every sentence after that tore something out of me. He explained it like he was reading a report. My money, my assets, my contracts. Everything had already been set in motion. Signed, approved, handled. And I remembered every paper I'd signed because I trusted him. Every time I thought, he's my husband. He would never do this to me. I screamed. I cried. I begged. I hated myself for begging. And I asked him if he even understood what he was doing to me. He wouldn't even look at me anymore like I was already a finished problem. And the last thing I heard from him was this: "You always thought you were smarter than everyone else," he said, his voice sharp, stripped of every ounce of affection. "You built everything by yourself. You thought you were untouchable, but you forgot the most basic thing. Nobody gets rich without becoming a target." I tried to step closer, still begging, still hoping there was something human left in him. He took a step back like I was dirty. "Don't touch me," he spit out. "This only happened because you made it easy. You signed. You trusted. This is your fault." And that's when she laughed. Not nervous, not awkward, loud, clear, satisfied. "You really believed he loved you?" she asked, staring me up and down like I was nothing. "He needed you, your money, your name. Now he doesn't." I told them it was evil, that it was inhuman, that they were taking it too far. She walked right up to my face and whispered, "Inhuman is spending your entire life being the shadow of a woman like you, and finally taking the place that was always meant to be mine." He exhaled, like he was tired of hearing my voice. "Enough. It's over," he said. "You already had everything. Now it's our turn." I cried. I begged. I promised anything. I told them I would split it all. I said I'd leave, disappear, vanish, never speak a word to anyone. He laughed for the first time that night. Cold, short, empty. "No," he said. "You can't walk away knowing too much." She crossed her arms and added, completely emotionless, "People like you don't survive when they get in the way of big plans." Then he leaned in slightly, and his final words came out low, pure disgust. "You've always been strong, so be strong until the end." He wasn't hiding it anymore. He wasn't nervous. He was irritated, like I'd already taken longer than he planned to spend on this. "Enough," he said again, rubbing his face. "This has gone on long enough." But I kept talking, begging, pleading, searching his eyes for any trace of the man I thought I married. I promised things no one should ever have to promise just to stay alive. None of it mattered. He pointed forward, into the darkness. "Get in." And that's when I saw it. A hole in the ground. Small, shallow, and inside it, a simple wooden coffin. Bare wood, rough edges, cheap, like it had been thrown together in a hurry. My entire body started shaking. My legs gave out before I could even take a step. "Please," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Don't do this. I'm begging you." He didn't answer. He just turned his head away, like he couldn't stand to listen to me anymore. She stepped closer, and the way she looked at me wasn't pure hatred. It was something worse. Satisfaction. Cruel, old satisfaction. Like she'd been collecting it for years and was finally cashing it in. I felt her foot press against me, steady, determined. "You've taken up enough space," she said coldly. "Now get down." I tried to hold on to the edge of the pit. My nails scraped dirt. My hands trembled so badly I could barely grip anything. "No. Please. I'll do anything." She didn't rush. She just pushed. The world tilted. I fell hard, crashing against the rough wood. The air ripped out of my lungs in a sound that didn't even feel human. Before I could sit up, the lid slammed shut above me, and the darkness swallowed me whole. I screamed. I pounded. I called his name. I called anyone's name. I begged for a miracle. And outside, I heard the most terrifying sound of all. Dirt hitting wood. One shovel after another. Each thud was a sentence. Each hit muffled my screams more and more. The coffin creaked. The air got thick, heavy, wrong. I cried out loud, with no pride left, no control, no shame, because I truly believed those were the last sounds I'd ever make. And then, at some point, everything went quiet. No voices. No footsteps, just silence, and the sick certainty that they were gone. Time stopped existing in there. I didn't know if it had been minutes or hours. Breathing became harder. My chest burned. My mind kept swinging between panic and a terrifying kind of exhaustion. I started talking to myself so I wouldn't lose it. I repeated my own name, like it could anchor me to life. And then, when I was already starting to believe no one would ever hear me, I screamed again. A weak scream. Raspy. A last attempt. And that's when I heard something different. Voices. Far away. Confused. Real. "Did you hear that?" a man's voice asked. It sounded like someone calling for help. A woman answered, stunned. They didn't believe it at first. Who would? Someone buried in the middle of nowhere? But then the scream came again, fainter, more desperate. And I heard hands digging. At first slow, then faster. Dirt being ripped away in a panic. I hit the lid with the little strength I had left. "Oh my God, there's someone in here," the woman said, her voice shaking. When the coffin lid was finally pulled off, light exploded into my eyes like an attack. I coughed, I sobbed, I breathed like it was the first breath of my life. Two faces appeared above me. An elderly couple, covered in dirt, terrified, horrified. "Easy, sweetheart, you're safe now," the woman said, gripping my hand like she refused to let go. And right there, lying at the bottom of a hole that was supposed to be my ending, I understood something that changed everything. They thought they finished me, but their biggest mistake was believing I wouldn't come back to the surface. While I was learning how to breathe again, they were learning how to celebrate. That thought kept repeating in my head until the world went dark and my legs finally gave out. The shock, the air forcing its way back into my lungs, the light stabbing my eyes, it was too much. I collapsed. I remember strong arms catching me before I hit the ground again. When I woke up, I wasn't in the woods anymore. Above me was a simple wooden ceiling, old and worn. The air smelled like fresh coffee and wet soil. I tried to move, but my body felt heavy, like parts of me were still trapped underground. Then I saw them again. The elderly couple. Simple people, tired eyes, but kind ones. The woman held a damp cloth, gently wiping my face like I belonged to her. The man sat near the doorway in silence, watching me like he still couldn't understand what he had found. "Easy, my daughter. You're home now," she said. And something about her voice made me cry before I even understood the words. They explained everything slowly. They told me they lived nearby, that they were farmers, simple people used to the silence of the woods. They said they had never seen anything so cruel in their entire lives, that they stayed awake all night, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand how one human being could do that to another. I tried to thank them, but my voice wouldn't come out right. My throat felt raw, like even my words had been buried with me. She told me they couldn't call the police. "There's no signal out here," she said, almost apologizing. "The closest station is far." For a moment, I felt relief. "Good," I murmured, struggling to breathe. They looked at me, confused. I swallowed hard, then finished in a low voice, quiet but steady. "Good that you didn't call. If you had, it would end too fast, and I need justice." I didn't explain. I didn't tell them who I was. I didn't mention money, a wedding, betrayal, or a husband who buried me alive. They didn't ask. They only exchanged a look, like they understood without needing the details. I spent the day there, being cared for in a way I hadn't been in years. Simple food, cold water, silence, and for the first time since the wedding, nobody wanted anything from me, not even my name. Before I left, I held their hands tightly. "I will never forget what you did for me," I said, feeling my throat tighten again. "One day, I promise I'll repay you." They laughed softly, an almost innocent laugh. "Don't worry about that, my child," the man said. "God already gives us enough." I asked where the nearest station was. They explained the path. When I reached the door, I stopped. I looked back. They were standing there, side by side, watching me leave. I smiled. Small, broken, a tear slipped down my face before I could stop it. I walked for a long time before I finally saw the station. My legs ached, but my mind felt strangely clear. I stepped inside, asked to use the phone, and dialed a number I knew by heart. Someone answered. "Hello?" For a second, I couldn't speak. And when my voice finally came out, it was low, rough, but unmistakable. "It's me." Silence hit instantly. Long, heavy. That's not possible, the person said, shocked. "I just got word that you died. They said it was an accident. They said only your husband survived." I closed my eyes. So that was it. Officially, I was dead. And he was alive. Free, rich. "They lied," I said calmly. "And now you know." On the other end of the line, his breathing turned fast. No questions at first, just the weight of what that call meant. And as I hung up, one thing became crystal clear inside me. If the world believed I was dead, I was going to use that. Because sometimes disappearing is the first step to coming back stronger than anyone ever imagined. The man on the other end of the line wasn't just an important contact. He was part of my story. We grew up in the business world together, back when I didn't have a powerful last name or headlines on my side. He was the one who believed in my ideas when nobody else did. We worked side by side. We failed together. We lost together. We won together. He knew my habits, my silences, the way my mind worked. I trusted him like family, and until that moment, I'd never regretted it. When he heard my voice, he didn't cry. He didn't shout. He didn't even speak for a long time. He just breathed on the other end of the line, like he was trying to decide whether this was real or some cruel trick from fate. "I saw the statement," he finally said, his voice low. "They said it was an accident, that you didn't make it. I saw your name. I saw the date." "I know," I said. "They took care of that too." And then I told him everything. I didn't hold back a single detail. I told him about my blind trust, the papers I signed, the car leaving the city, the woman I saw at the wedding, the grave, the coffin, the dirt falling while I screamed. My voice broke a few times, but I kept going. Because that was the first time someone needed to hear the entire truth. When I finished, he was in shock. "That's a crime," he whispered. "That's monstrous. I'm calling the police right now. They can't." "No," I cut him off, calm. A calm I didn't even recognize in myself. He went silent. "You don't understand," I continued. "What's coming for him will come at the right time, in the right way. But if you do it now," I said, my voice turning hard, "he'll hide. He'll erase tracks. He'll make himself the victim. And I didn't survive just to watch him escape." Another pause. Longer. "You're still you," he finally said, "even after all this." "No," I answered. "I'm not." Then I asked for my first favor. I told him to let my parents know secretly that I was alive. Only that I was alive. And for now, they couldn't see me. They couldn't look for me. They couldn't react in any way. It was the hardest thing I'd asked for so far. My voice barely held together. "They're suffering," he said carefully. "I know," I whispered, my chest tightening, "but they'll suffer less when they know I'm breathing." And then I asked for what truly mattered. "I need you to run a full search on him," I said. "Everything. Companies, accounts, contracts, recent transfers. Nothing gets missed. And I want the same on her. Every move, every connection." He didn't question me. He only said, "I'll do it." I asked for more. I asked him to send his driver to pick me up. I told him I couldn't use any of mine, not one. To the world, I was dead. And I needed to stay that way. "No one can know," I repeated. "No one. You can stay at my house," he said without hesitation. "As long as you need, it's safe." I agreed. I told him I needed somewhere I could think, gather proof, rebuild everything without being seen. He said the driver was already on the way. When I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt since that night. Control. The car arrived not long after. I slid into the back seat, lowered the window, and watched the road disappear behind me. Every mile took me farther from the woman they tried to erase, and closer to the one they never should have created. At his house, I took the longest shower of my life. The water ran down my skin like it wasn't just washing off dirt, it was washing off innocence. I put on simple, borrowed clothes and sat down at a table covered in old documents, photos, contracts. All of it was still mine, whether the world knew it or not. That night, alone in a quiet room, I didn't sleep. I planned, because while they thought they had buried a problem, I was collecting proof to turn their lives into something worse than death. I was alive, and that changed everything. My business partner was the first one to say it out loud, and even then, I wasn't ready to hear it. His name is Daniel. He's always been direct, methodical, the kind of man who trusts evidence more than instincts. We grew up in business together because I trusted his mind the way I trusted my gut. And that night, when he stepped into the makeshift office in his house and closed the door just a little too slowly, I knew something big was coming. "You weren't the first," he said. No warm-up, no hesitation. I didn't answer. I just felt my stomach drop. Daniel spread the papers across the table. Reports, old records, names I'd never heard, grainy photos, cases that had been closed way too fast. He pointed to them one by one. 3 women before you, 3 different stories, but the same pattern. He took a breath. Fast marriages, power of attorney, isolation, disappearances treated like accidents, runaways, or tragedies nobody questions too hard. 4. I was the 4th. My body went cold. This wasn't just about me anymore. It never had been. And he walked away clean every time, Daniel continued. Every single time. No exceptions. I shut my eyes for a second. I remembered the calm voice, the gentle tone, the patience that always felt so safe. That wasn't charm. It was a system. He thought you'd be just another one, Daniel said. And now there was anger in his voice. Another name to erase. Another fortune to take. I opened my eyes slowly. He was wrong. Daniel nodded. Badly wrong. And right then, something inside me shifted for good. Up until that moment, my revenge had a face. Now it had a purpose. Those women never got a voice, never got answers, never got justice. And he stayed free because he chose his victims carefully, until he chose someone who didn't know how to stay buried. Daniel leaned over the table again. "There's more," he said. "In a month, there's a major charity event. One of those nights that cleans reputations and gets people on magazine covers." He paused, almost cruelly. "I got the guest list," he continued. "And guess who's on it?" I smiled. A smile with no joy in it at all. "Him." "Yes," Daniel confirmed. "Him and the Mistress. As the perfect couple. Sponsors, donors, role models." I leaned back in the chair and felt my blood start to boil. "There's no better stage," I said, "and no more perfect audience." From that day on, everything became surveillance. With Daniel's help, I watched their every move, not from far away, up close, from the inside. Suspicious financial transfers, shell companies, repeated signatures, contracts that changed hands every time someone disappeared. Everything left a trail. Everything had a pattern. And now, everything was being documented. I watched his interviews, the way he spoke about ethics, resilience, the losses he'd suffered in the past. I watched the Mistress smiling beside him like she was only a partner in success, not in crime. Every word they said fed something inside me. Not messy rage, not chaos. A clean, focused, quiet anger. At night, I barely slept. Not from fear, from anticipation. I pictured his face when he finally understood. Not when he got accused, but when it clicked. When he realized the woman he swore he buried was standing right there alive, whole, and holding enough proof to destroy everything. The month crawled by. Painfully. On purpose. And when Daniel walked into the room a few days before the event, holding the final folder, I knew there was no turning back. "It's all here," he said. "Every signature, every transfer, every lie." I took the folder carefully. Then it's time. Not for fast justice. Not for police rushing in. Not for a quiet ending. For exposure. For a public fall. For watching calmly as the man who always walked away clean finally learned what it feels like to have nowhere left to run. The date was set, and he was still smiling, not knowing it would be his last smile before everything collapsed. As I got ready, the mirror felt like it was testing me. Every simple movement dragged up a memory I wanted to keep buried. The dress sliding over my body, the clasp being fastened, the perfume I barely recognized on my own skin anymore. And behind it all, the images kept coming back. Dirt falling, darkness, air running out, the disgust in his eyes. A tear threatened to fall. I felt it build, heavy and hot. For 1 second, I let it reach the edge. Then I inhaled and stopped it. I didn't survive to cry that day. Not there. Not now. Daniel was waiting in the living room. When he saw me, he froze, mouth slightly open, like his brain couldn't catch up fast enough. I was wearing a red dress. Bold, unforgettable, impossible to ignore. The jewelry caught the light in a way that was calculated, pulling attention without asking permission. It wasn't vanity. It was strategy. I walked right past him and said, without slowing down, "You might want to close your mouth before a bug flies in." He laughed, still stunned. "If he sees you like this," he started, but he didn't finish. We got into the car. During the drive, the city looked different. The lights, the people, everything moved like normal, like nothing had happened. Daniel glanced at me, serious now. "Today isn't just about you coming back," he said. "Today is the day the story changes sides. They'll never control the narrative again." I nodded. Today, nobody buries me twice. The car stopped in front of the charity event. Bright lights, a flawless red carpet, important people in expensive clothes, soft, elegant music floating through the air. It was the kind of place where reputation mattered more than money, which is exactly why it was perfect. The moment we walked in, the entire room froze. Forks stopped halfway to mouths. Conversations died in the middle of sentences. Hands flew up to cover lips. Eyes widened, and a whisper spread through the tables like fire. I heard my name, my real name. Helena. Helena was alive. We walked forward, and the crowd opened automatically, like no one dared to stop us. With every step, the floor felt more solid beneath me. I could feel the stairs burning into my skin, but I didn't look away. Not this time. And then I saw him. My ex-husband stood with his back to me, laughing at something the mistress whispered into his ear. A champagne glass in his hand, too comfortable inside his perfect little world. The music kept playing. His laugh sounded way too light for a man carrying that many invisible bodies. I reached out and lightly touched his shoulder. When he turned around, his smile died instantly. The color drained from his face. His eyes went wide, like he was staring at something his brain couldn't process. He stumbled back a step, almost spilling the champagne. This is impossible. I smiled. Calm, precise. "What's wrong?" I asked, tilting my head slightly. "Did you see a ghost?" The mistress froze. Her glass shook in her hand. The champagne nearly spilled over, but she didn't even notice. She stared at me like I was a mistake that couldn't be fixed. The entire room watched, and for the first time since that night in the woods, I saw real fear in their eyes. Not fear of losing money. Not fear of the police. The fear of people who just realized the past didn't stay buried. It came back. And this time, it wasn't coming back quietly. The silence that swallowed the room was more violent than any scream. I could feel everyone staring at me like invisible blades. My ex-husband kept looking at me, frozen, trying to decide if this was real or if his mind had finally snapped. The mistress looked like she'd forgotten how to breathe. Her glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor, the sharp sound cracking through the room like a warning. Daniel stepped forward. "You might want to pay attention," he said, his voice steady, "because tonight is only just beginning." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I picked up the microphone from the main table, the same one that had been used minutes earlier for empty speeches about kindness and generosity. I adjusted it calmly. Every second was deliberate. "Good evening," I said. "Some of you believed I was dead." A wave of murmurs rolled through the room. Others, I continued, staring directly at him, bet everything on it. People shifted. They leaned in. Phones appeared, subtle but ready. No one wanted to miss what was happening. And then I started to speak, not with dramatic tears, with facts, dates, signatures, powers of attorney, companies that changed names right after certain disappearances, stories that, on their own, looked like tragedies. But together they formed a pattern no one could ignore. His face hardened. "This is ridiculous," he cut in, finding his voice again. "She's delirious. Everyone knows she had an accident. This is a breakdown." I smiled again. "Interesting that you'd say that." Daniel made a small signal, and the screens around the room lit up. Documents appeared. Bank records, old photos, names of women no one in that room recognized, followed by the same sequence, over and over again. Marriage, power of attorney, disappearance, transfer of assets. The room erupted into chaos. "Turn that off," he shouted. "This is fraud." And then it happened. A man stood up in the middle of the crowd. Then another. Then another. People I didn't expect. People who weren't part of the plan. "That signature," one of them said, stunned. "I recognize it. I audited that contract." "This company," another man added, shaken. "It's one we've been investigating for months." My heart started racing. That wasn't in the calculations. He noticed it before I did. His eyes lit up, not with fear, but with opportunity. He straightened his posture, almost confident again, like he'd found a crack he could slip through. "Exactly," he said, raising his hands. "An investigation, not a conviction. She's trying to manipulate you with an emotional story. Where's the real proof that any of this was a crime?" The room hesitated. And then came the hit I didn't see coming. The mistress stepped closer to the microphone. Her hands were still trembling, but her eyes were sharp. "She's lying," she said, her voice cracking at the perfect point between victim and desperation. "This woman has been stalking us for years. She's obsessed. This is all staged." Some people nodded. Others stepped back. The air shifted. For the first time that night, I felt the ground move under me. They were fighting back. My ex-husband looked at me with a half smile, an old smile, the same one he wore when he thought he had control. "You've always been brilliant," he murmured, low enough that only I could hear. "But you still play alone." The microphone felt heavy in my hand. The room wasn't fully on my side anymore. The moment I'd spent months building was starting to slip through my fingers like wet sand. For a second, fear tried to crawl back in, but it didn't last. Because while they thought they'd turn the game around, I remembered something that mattered. I didn't bring everything into that room. I saved the best part. I let the microphone go slowly, like I was accepting the pause. One step back, then another. The murmurs grew louder because everyone thought I was backing down. But it wasn't retreat. It was patience. Because in a match like this, not every hit has to be immediate. Some shots only need the right timing. Just enough air, just enough distance to cross the court and land exactly where it hurts. And by the time they realized that, it would already be too late to run. The silence spread across the room again, but this time it wasn't shock. It was anticipation. They truly believed I'd lost control, that I'd folded. My ex-husband adjusted his suit jacket, breathing a little too easy. The mistress gripped the microphone with both hands, clinging to her version of the truth like it was the only thing keeping her upright. That's when Daniel moved. He didn't say a word. He simply walked to the side of the ballroom and gave the sound technician a small, calm signal. The first return came without warning. The lights dimmed slightly, and a new image appeared on the screens. Not cold paperwork, not bank statements, audio, and then his voice filled the room clear, unmistakable. She already signed everything. This one was easy. By the time she realizes it, it'll be too late. A ripple ran through the crowd like a collective chill. He spun toward Daniel, panic cracking through his face. "Turn that off, now!" Daniel didn't even look at him. The second return came harder. Another recording, another date, another woman. If anything goes wrong, we make it look like an accident. It always works. The mistress dropped the microphone. It hit the floor with a sharp crack, like a point lost. She covered her mouth, eyes scanning the room for an exit that no longer existed. I stepped forward. "You asked where the real proof was," I said, looking straight at him. "It was with me the whole time. I just wanted to see how far you'd go." He tried to speak. Nothing came out. For the first time, there was no polished line, no practiced charm, no control, just panic. And then the third return landed like the final blow. The screens played a short video, recorded from a shaky angle. I recognized the place before the sound even hit the woods, the darkness. And then her voice, cold and impatient. "Just push her already. No one's going to know." The room exploded. Shouts, chairs, scraping, people standing up all at once. Someone yelled for security. Someone else screamed for the police. The same eyes that had judged me minutes earlier now cut through them like knives. My ex-husband stumbled back, tripping over his own urgency. The mistress started crying, spilling broken words that weren't meant for anyone in particular because there was no one left to convince. I took a slow breath. None of this was improvisation. Every hit I sent back that night was memory. It was patience. It was survival. He looked at me one last time, eyes red, voice cracked. "You didn't have to do this." I tilted my head, feeling a calm I'd never felt before. "Yes, I did," I said, "because you always counted on your victims staying silent." Sirens began to approach, still distant, but unavoidable. The ballroom was no longer a charity event. It was a courtroom, and they were alone in the center of it. When security moved in, I didn't celebrate. I didn't smile. I just watched. Because this match was never about winning a pretty point. It was about returning every single shot they tried to bury, until there was no space left on the other side of the court. And as they were pulled away, I knew the game had changed forever. Not because I won, but because I came back. When the police arrived, I didn't need to say a single word. I stayed back, silent, watching Daniel speak to the officers. He was steady, clear, like a man who had been waiting months for this exact moment. He pointed to the screen still glowing, listed dates, names, patterns. Then he said something that stayed with me. "The full evidence will be on the detective's desk today. Organized, documented, everything." The officers nodded. Their eyes weren't doubtful anymore. They were certain. My ex-husband tried to speak one last time, not to me, but to them. But nobody cared to listen anymore. The mistress cried quietly, folded in on herself, stripped of the arrogance she'd worn just minutes earlier. When they were taken away, I didn't feel joy. I felt something better. Closure. Daniel touched my arm gently. "Come on," he said. "You've done more than enough here." We left before the room fully emptied. Outside, The air felt different, lighter, like the city was breathing with me for the first time in a long time. When we reached the car, Daniel opened the door for me with a care that felt almost ceremonial. Before I stepped in, he said in a tone way too casual for someone who had just dismantled a criminal empire, "How about we celebrate at a restaurant?" I looked at him for a second. Then a small smile slipped out, tired, real, human. "I think I deserve dinner," I said. The restaurant was on the rooftop of one of the tallest buildings in the city. When we arrived, the view made me stop for a moment. Lights spread out like artificial stars, streets alive below, the entire city pulsing indifferent to the chaos that had just swallowed 2 lives. We went up. The place was elegant, quiet, warm, soft music, tables spaced out. The kind of place people choose when they're celebrating something that matters. But I wasn't ready. After a few steps, I saw my mother first. She was standing, hands trembling, like she was afraid I might disappear again. My father stood beside her, trying to hold himself together, but his eyes were shining. I froze, and before my mind could catch up, my mother ran to me. She wrapped her arms around me with a strength I forgot she had. She cried without speaking, like every word had gotten stuck in the days she truly believed she'd lost me. "You're here," she kept repeating. "You're here." My father hugged me next, silent, in that restrained way only he could. I felt the weight of everything they'd lived through without me, and the peace of finally being able to take some of that pain away. And then I saw something that made my heart miss a beat. The elderly couple was there. The woman smiled the moment our eyes met, and the man stood up slowly, wearing the same calm expression he had the day he dug through the earth with his own hands to save me. "I told you God already gives us enough," he said simply. And this time, the tears came with no resistance. Because in that moment, I understood something I hadn't fully grasped before. Surviving hadn't been luck. It had been an encounter. It had been humanity. Daniel watched from a distance, quiet and satisfied. He had arranged everything without telling me. Every detail, every face, a kind of closure I didn't even know I needed. When I finally sat down at the table, surrounded by the people who loved me, and the people who gave me my life back, I felt something I hadn't felt since before the wedding. Peace. But when I lifted my eyes, I caught Daniel's gaze for a brief second. And there wasn't only relief there. There was calculation, anticipation, a contained spark in the eyes of someone who wasn't finished yet. He raised his glass like he was toasting the moment, and he smiled. I didn't know it yet, but that night wasn't just a celebration. It was the quiet pause before the final move. When Daniel lifted his glass, the restaurant fell silent in a respectful way, almost sacred. He took a breath before speaking, like he was measuring every word because he knew they would stay. "There are moments in life when we confuse strength with hardness," he began. "When we think surviving means moving forward without ever looking back. But real survival is having the courage to feel, to trust, to love again. Tonight, I'm celebrating someone who came back from the dark without losing her light. Someone who turned pain into truth, silence into a voice, and a fall into a new beginning." He looked at me then, not like a business partner, not like a strategist, but like a man. Helena taught me that justice isn't revenge, it's freedom, and that love isn't an empty promise, it's presence. Before I could even understand what was happening, Daniel set his glass down, took 2 steps forward, and dropped to one knee. The air left my lungs. "Helena," he said, voice steady but eyes shining, "I've loved you since the first day I saw you. I loved you in silence, out of respect. I loved you from a distance, out of fear. And I almost lost the chance to tell you forever. I can't lose you again." The restaurant held its breath. "Will you walk with me? Not as an eternal promise yet, but as a daily choice. Will you be my girlfriend? My mother pressed a hand to her chest. My father closed his eyes, overwhelmed. Mrs. Lydia was openly crying, while Mr. Joachim smiled in that simple, peaceful way that made the whole world feel softer. I didn't think. I didn't calculate. I just felt. Yes, I said, my voice trembling. I will. He stood up and kissed me gently, like he understood some kisses don't need speed. The applause came loud, but far away because in that moment, only the two of us existed. 8 months passed, and time did what time does. When it finds love, it put things back in order on the inside. Daniel prepared everything quietly, the way he always did. When he proposed, there was no audience and no long speeches, just a ring, a nervous smile, and certainty. I said yes. And now I stood in front of a mirror, wearing a wedding dress, but not like the bride I had been before. There was no tightness in my chest, no warning screaming in my head, only calm, a calm I had never known. I could feel it. This was different. This was right. The ceremony began. I walked down an aisle covered in rose petals, lilies, and tiny white flowers. The scent was soft. The people were chosen, only the ones I truly wanted there. My family. Daniel's family. And in the front row, Mrs. Lydia and Mr. Joachim, holding hands like they had always belonged in that place. When it was time for vows, Daniel held the microphone with both hands. Helena, he said with a smile, I promise to be shelter, not a prison. I promise to walk beside you, not ahead of you. I promise to listen when you fall silent, and to stay when the world tries to take you away. I choose you every day. My heart was pounding when I took the microphone. I thought I would never live something like this again, I began, emotional. I thought some dreams had been buried with me, but God looked at me and said, my daughter, don't be afraid. I am with you. I took a breath. He took my grandparents, but he gave me new ones. Mrs. Lydia and Mr. Joachim, you gave me my life back when the world had already forgotten me. I will never forget that. Then I looked at Daniel, my eyes full. I say yes today, and I say yes every day. Yes to you. Yes to love. Yes to the life we chose to build. When the final words echoed, I understood something simple and permanent. Some stories begin at the altar. Others have to end beneath the earth, so they can start again the right way. And me? I was finally home. If you made it this far, thank you for walking with me all the way to the end of this story. Some stories aren't only about pain, betrayal, or revenge. They're about survival, about the quiet strength of someone who falls, gets erased, and still finds a way back. They're about justice that doesn't need to scream, about perfect timing, about simple people who save lives without expecting anything in return. Let this story remind you of something important. Not everything that looks buried is lost. Not every silence is defeat. And not every fall is the end. If at any point you felt weak, forgotten, or wronged, remember this. Life can still surprise you. Sometimes it's just preparing your comeback. Thank you for listening, for feeling, and for staying until the very last moment. Take care of yourself, and never underestimate the strength of someone who chooses to live.